Ladies and gentlemen, there is an emergency in the Alaska Prepper household. We are down to 2 pints of carrots. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. I went to the commissary yesterday and I remembered when I was there that we were running low on carrots. I canned some carrots, I don't know, almost 3 years ago or so. And we're down to our last 2 pints. And yes, I was trying to be lazy. So I took a look and see how much their canned carrots were there at the commissary. And I was kind of flabbergasted that they only had one variety or one brand. And it was $1.30 something per can. I think it was $1.34 for a 15.5 ounce can, of which half of that weight, if not most of it, is just the water that's inside of it. So I decided to go out today, buy some fresh carrots, and I'm going to can my own. So for those of you that have never canned carrots before, stay tuned. Very easy. All we're going to need are, of course, some carrots, some jars, depending on how many you want to can, a knife, a peeler, a little bit of salt, some water, and a little bit of vinegar. And that should do it. So stand by. Thank you very much for joining. So the first step, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be just cutting the ends off the carrots and then peeling them. And what I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to go ahead and save the fat end of the carrots to dice them into cubes. I'm going to save the skinnier end of the carrot to go ahead and cut them into rounds. All right, so that we can have 2 different types of shapes. Obviously, it's not going to change the taste any, but it's just nice to have a variety in shapes because different shapes give off different textures. So let's get to it. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is all of them. I am very curious to see how many jars this will fill up. I'm not sure if I remember telling you this or not, but I'm going to be using quart jars. And the reason is because we've noticed that every time we use our carrots from the pantry, we usually use 2 pints at a time. So might as well just do quart jars. So I'll be right back. Let me get some jars out, ready to go, and then I'll show you our bounty. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, a lot of you are going to say you don't have to put your lids in hot water anymore. However, I still do it. It's the way I've always done it. And 3 out of 5 of these quart lids are the old style lids. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in there anyways. I like to do it. It gives me a warm and fuzzy. I almost burned my finger. And it doesn't really do any harm. Okay, so I'm going to leave those in there. What I do is I'll leave those in there until the water gets hot, not until it comes to a boil. When the water gets pretty hot, where I see that it's got little bubbles forming in the bottom, I turn it off, and then when I'm ready to use it, I'll go ahead and grab it with my magnet stick. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at how many carrots we got, and let's start filling the jars. All right, well, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'll tell you what. I spent $12 on all of these carrots. And if I'd have bought 10 cans of the 15 and a half ounce cans of carrots, it would have cost me $13.40. Now, some comments that I've had in the past is, well, it's going to cost you a lot more than that now because you have to pay for the jars, you have to pay for the lids and all that. Whoever said that is 100% correct. However, these jars are reusable. The lids are not really, although I've seen some people reuse them, but I wouldn't recommend it. The jars are reusable, all right? And you are spending a little bit of your time and a little bit of fuel to pressure can these. Now, pressure canning is not a one-time thing. You don't buy jars and you don't buy a pressure canner, and then once you use them once, you throw them away. So you have to make a small investment and hoping that over time you use your canner enough to where the small investment that you made in the beginning will have paid off in the long run. All right. So for those of you that may be thinking, well, I have to go out and buy this and that. Absolutely you do. But over time, your canner will pay for itself. All right. Just like mine. My canner has paid for itself several times over. Let me go ahead and make a correction to that. My canners, I've got 3 canners. All of those have already paid for themselves several times over the years that I've been canning. All right. So I got my jars ready. All I did with my jars was just wash them and dried them. And now I'm going to go ahead and fill them. This is going to be a pressure canning method, so we don't really need to sanitize the jars like if you were going to be doing the water bath method. Pressure canning is going to ensure that all of the bacteria and any bad jujus that are inside that jar get killed. All right, so let's go ahead and fill those jars, and then let's get our pressure canner ready. So this is all we have right here. But I have an idea, ladies and gentlemen, something I've never done before. So give me a second, I'll be right back. So a while back, I had some carrots that I diced up and I put in the freezer in Ziploc bags. And this is them. And they look a little rough, but guess what? They're still carrots. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in there and see how they turn out. So we'll go ahead and use this to try to fill up the rest of this quart jar here. I think this is going to do it. We're going to call that good. So if it's not all the way full, that's not that big of a deal. All right, so now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of salt. I'll put a ½ teaspoon of salt in each of these, and then we're going to fill them up with water. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so now it's time to fill them up. Now, this is a special trick that I use. Instead of using water, I fill it up with apple juice. It comes out delicious. I'm just kidding, ladies and gentlemen. I don't put apple juice in there. I just used nice, clean, filtered water. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've seen the water part of this method done a couple of different ways. Some people just put cold water in here like I'm doing, and some people actually go ahead and boil their water before putting it in here and put it in here boiling hot. Now, you can do it either way. However, if you use the boiling water method, you want to remember to make sure that the water that you have in your pressure canner before you put these jars in there hot, that water has come up to a pretty decent temperature as well. You don't want to put hot jars into cold water, and you don't want to put cold jars into hot water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put cold water into my jars. I'm going to put my jars in the pressure canner while the water in there is still cold. I won't turn it on until all of the jars are in there and I'm ready to turn that pressure canner on. That way all of the water and the ingredients in the jars all come up to temperature at the same time. All right, I hope you understood that, what I'm trying to tell you. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that we get rid of any bubbles. Now, if you don't have one of these, ladies and gentlemen, anything will really work. The only thing I would stay away from is anything that's made out of metal, poking around in your jars, because if you use something that's made out of metal, you can scratch the inside of the jar without really knowing it, and that could end up with the jar cracking on you or bursting inside of your canner. And as you can see, when we debubbled it, you need to add a little more water. So we're going to go back around and add a little more water to each of these. Getting rid of the bubbles is pretty important, especially when you're pressure canning, because what that does is it prevents the jars from burping. When you have a little bubble in there, when it's under pressure, it gets really small. And when the pressure is relieved, when you turn off the temperature, when you turn off the heat, the bubbles start to expand. If they expand too much, too fast, they'll burp and it'll make the lid come up a little and you can lose your seal. All right, so that's a really quick way of explaining why it's important to debubble, especially when you're pressure canning. Now we're going to go ahead and clean our rims with a little bit of vinegar. We're going to put our lids on and get the pressure canner ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I know that I'm more likely speaking to a crowd of community members that probably already know a lot about canning, but this is really for someone who's beginning, right? You make sure that when you put your lid on that it's centered. Then what I like to do is I like to take my ring, put it on top of it. I take one finger, hold down this lid, and then I just make sure that I thread it on nice and loose. All you have to do is you do not want to tighten this really tight. This is what I do to tighten it. I give it one turn where it's a little tight, and then I bring it back just a little bit. You should be able to take this off with 2 fingers. See that? There you go. It's easy as that. It's not difficult. If you've never pressure canned before, don't be intimidated by it. It's not difficult. Literally, if I can do this, ladies and gentlemen, you can do it as well. It's very easy. Get another ring for my small mouth because I ran out of big mouths or wide mouths. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get another ring, put it on here, and we'll get to our pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my Tfal canner. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My Tfal canner is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I master my life. My Tfal canner, without me, is useless. Without my Tfal canner, I am useless. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to get a canner and you've never had one before, if you've never done it, this is the one that I recommend. And I recommend it for a few reasons. Number one, the price is great. I think I just looked these up on Amazon. They were like $69.99 or something like that, which is a very good price for a quality canner, and I consider this a quality canner. The second thing that I really like about it, it has a mechanical weight, or at least what I call a mechanical weight. It is not one of those weights that you take off and put on and that you can lose, but one that stays on here and that you can change the pressure settings from 1 to 2 to 3, 1 being 5 pounds, 2 being 10 pounds, and 3 being 15 pounds of pressure. Right? And you just change it like this. Very easy. Right here, where you see this little icon right here, this is in the open, meaning that when you leave it here, it'll just let vapor come out, all right? Which is one of the functions that's necessary for a pressure canner, okay? It has a safety under this knob, so if it goes over pressure, the safety should pop off, and it also has a very nice pressure gauge. Again, like I said, it's a great canner. I've used this canner an awful lot, never had a problem with it. All right, so if you guys are interested in this, I will leave a link in a pinned comment because every time I use this canner, someone always asks me, where did I get it? All right, so now what I'm going to show you is inside. I've already got some water in there. You see that? Okay, now, a lot of people ask me, how much water do you put in it? Well, my instruction manual that came with this says that I should put in anywhere between 3 quarts to 1 gallon of water. What I do is, once I have all of my jars in there that I'm going to put in there, I make sure that the water level does not go above half of the level of the height of the jar. Okay, that's the method that I use, and it's always worked for me. However, follow the instructions in your manual to make sure that you don't burn this out. By burning it out, I mean that if you run out of water when you're pressure canning, it can warp your canner and ruin it. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my jars in there and show you what it looks like when I have them all in there so you can see the water level. But right there, it's just a little over 1/2 above the halfway point, which is fine. Normally, I put vinegar in here. I put about 1/4 cup of vinegar in here. I didn't this time because what I forgot to mention to you is that when I was heating up my lids, I put a little bit of vinegar in that water. And then I used the water from my lids to put in here. So there's already a little bit of vinegar in there. It's a good idea to put some vinegar in there, white vinegar, to make sure that if there are any solids inside your water or any contaminants in the water that you're using to put in your pressure canner, that it won't cloud up your jars. If you don't, it's not going to hurt the contents inside of the jar. It's just going to give you a little extra work in cleaning the jars once you have to clean them. Closing it, putting it on open, and turning on our fire on high. Now, once we turn the fire on high, what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this to start steaming. Once steam starts coming out of here, we're going to let it steam for 10 minutes before we set our weight to number 3. I always set my weight to number 3 to be on the safe side. I only have to set it to number 2, but I always set it to number 3. Right? So we'll be back when that happens. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have steam coming out here at a nice fast rate, I'm sure you can see that steam coming out. What we're going to do is we're going to set our weight to number 3. That's what I set it on, number 3. Okay? And now what that's going to do is it's going to close that valve, and it's going to allow the pressure to start building inside. And what I will do is I will come back once that pressure is at 10 pounds or above. I'm going to wait 10 minutes before I start my timer. I've got my timer on 45 minutes for quart jars. Now, some people say that quart jars are just fine at 30-35 minutes. I always like to add a few extra minutes just to be on the safe side. 45 minutes works just fine for me. All right, so we're going to wait until this pressure gauge gets up to 10 pounds and above. I'm going to lower my heat. That way it's not overheating it. All right, you don't need to use that much energy. It actually saves a little bit on gas. And then once the 10 minutes has passed, I'm going to go ahead and start my timer for the 45 minutes. Then we'll be back to turn it off and wait till it depressurizes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so it's been 45 minutes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off my burner. And this is very important. And this is for those of you that maybe are not very experienced at pressure canning. Once you turn off your burner, you do not touch this pressure canner until your pressure is all the way down to 0. Okay, once your pressure is all the way down to 0 and you open your valve to the open and there's no steam coming out, then we can go ahead and open the lid. Why is that? The reason for that is because there's a lot of pressure in that pressure canner right now. If you open it prematurely, you can bust the seal in the jars. And if you open it when there's a lot of pressure in there, first of all, that can be very dangerous, number one. And number two, it can as much as pop your jars inside. So it's very important to remember to let your pressure canner naturally depressurize before you open it and take the jars out. Now, we don't want to leave the jars in there like overnight or anything like that. We just want to wait until it comes down to 0, until our valve is open and there's nothing coming out, and we can easily take the lid off. And then we will remove the jars from there with a jar holder. Okay, I'm going to come back when it comes down to 0 and we can open it. I want to apologize ahead of time. I will not be placing any links on a pinned comment so that you can get this pressure canner. I just checked Amazon and they are unavailable, and they don't know when they're going to become available again. Okay, I do have other pressure canners in my Amazon storefront that I own and that I recommend because they are also very good pressure canners. All right, one of them is the All-American, which is a very good pressure canner which will last you the rest of your life. Okay, it's kind of like a hand-me-down to your children. All right, that's how good of a pressure canner it is. It doesn't have any gaskets or anything like that to deal with. And the other one is a Presto. That is also a very good pressure canner with an entry-level price tag on it. The Presto is also unavailable. So it looks like there's a lot of things that are unavailable right now on Amazon because a lot of the things that they get are probably made in China. I'm not sure if this is made in China or not. I do believe that the All-American is made here in the US of A. All right, so that one is probably still available, and it comes in many different sizes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll be back once this is at 0 and we're ready to take the jars out so that you can see what they look like after they've been processed. We are ready to open the pressure canner. As you can see, I have my gauge here, or my weight, my mechanical weight, is what I like to call it, on open. Let me turn this around a little bit so you can see. See that? I have it on open right there, which means that all of the pressure inside the canner is out. You can see that it's on 0. So now what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going through this in case someone that's new to pressure canning is watching, okay? When I open this, I open it, and when I open it, I tilt it my way. That way, if any steam comes out, it will come out on the far side, the farthest side away from you, okay? So I go like this. You see that? So any steam coming out is coming out away from you. Oops, sorry about that. Now I'm going to take the lid off, and I am going to start taking the jars out. I'm going to take one jar out and show you how I do it because I think that it's important for you to know this. Now these jars, ladies and gentlemen, they are still processing. They are still cooking, and they are still in the process of creating a seal. So when you lift them out of your pressure canner, you want to make sure that you lift them straight up and then go put them where you're going to set them. Another thing that I like to do is one of two things that you can do. I personally like to just put a towel down on the counter. That way the jars are not sitting directly on the counter. So like I said, when I lift these up, oops, sorry, I'm holding them the wrong way. I'm holding that. When I lift this up, I'm going to lift it up nice and straight. Straight up. And then I'm going to move it over. And put it on my towel. Right? We'll be back here in a minute so I can show you what they all look like coming out of the canner. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's obvious by what you can see here that I did not put enough vinegar in the water. Because you can see, this is what I was talking about, where it creates a film outside the jar. This doesn't hurt anything. It just means that you're going to have to wash the jars a little bit, you know, before you put them away or before you reuse them the next time. But that's not going to hurt anything. What I will do is this. I will probably wash these off before I put them away in my pantry. Very important that once you place your jars on your counter, wherever you're going to place them, that you do not touch them. Don't play with them. Don't move them. Don't do anything. Like I said, they're still in the process of sealing. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's still little bubbles coming up. And you can see bubbles in there. See that? You're going to leave these jars in place. Don't touch them for at least the next 16 hours, preferably the next 24 hours. So I won't touch these jars again till around this same time tomorrow evening. And there you go. You heard our first winner, our first little pop of the lid. And if you're an experienced canner, you know that that's music to your ears. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to go ahead and wait till tomorrow until I wash these all up so I can show you what they look like when they're nice and clean and they have completely sealed. So we're going to see you one more time before we're done with this video. It has been 21 hours, ladies and gentlemen, since I took these out of the canner. As you can see, they're looking nice and clean. I went ahead and passed them through a little bit of soapy water and cleaned them up. And this is what we yielded. Now, I want you to take a look at these and see how pretty they look. Look at that. All of my seals are good and didn't lose too much water on any of them. The only one that lost a little bit more water than I would have liked was the smallmouth jar, but that's still just fine. Nothing wrong with that. So there you go. I hope that those of you that are considering taking up pressure canning, that you really think about it and go out there and get yourself what you need to start so that you can start putting away your own foods and not have to worry about finding them in the store, especially if you have a garden. Now, some people may say that, well, what it cost you to do this would have been about the same if you would have bought the cans. In this case, it could be, because I did buy organic carrots from the store, or at least they were labeled organic, and I probably paid a lot more for them than what I would have paid should I have grown them myself, right? But I still enjoy doing this, and I still think it is a cost-effective way of doing this. If I had to sit down with a piece of paper and pencil and actually figure out exactly what it cost me to do this, I would still say that it cost me less to do this myself than if I would have bought the cans. And look at one of these, ladies and gentlemen. I would guess that one of these has more than 2 of the cans that you buy at the store. So if we do the math, we have 7 jars. You would say that's at least 14 cans that you buy at the store. I would say that there's probably about 16 to 18 cans of what you would buy at the store there in weight, right? If you take the carrots out and actually weigh them, it would probably be the equivalent of about 16 to 18 cans. So I really believe that, because when you open one of those cans, you don't get half of what's in one of these. You probably get a little less than half of what's in one of these, if not considerably less. At least that's what I think. So I hope you guys try it. If you do, please let us know. And if you do start pressure canning and you work on a few projects on your own, by all means, go over to our Facebook page, if you're not there already, and post pictures of your projects. It's a great thing to do, because it encourages other people to start doing the same thing. And reach one, teach one, repeat is one of the things that we're about here in the Alaska Prepper community. So having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys got something out of this, and I hope you at least enjoyed watching the process. And if you haven't done it, I hope that you consider starting to do it. So remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper. I'm out.